Hey guys, welcome to the Golf Podcast Live. I'm your host, Raphael Calmat, out in Toronto, Canada. And with me, as always, we have Michael Bleakley at ECS Agency and Studios. You know, today's a very special day after that crazy weekend. If you watched any golf over the weekend, big shout out and congratulations to Stephen Ames winning out in Morocco on the Champions Tour, as well as unbelievable finish with Scheffler and our boys Adam Hadwin. And we'll talk about the other guy who finished second in a moment. But first, I want to introduce you to a very special journeyman professional. He's also the star of episode 1 on a new show called The Grind. If you haven't seen it yet, make sure you go on YouTube and watch it. It's something that's been put together by the Fire Pit Collective. We have Mr. Mark Baldwin. Welcome to the show.
Great to be with you, Raphael and Michael. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
You know, tell us how this all got started. The show, how you got picked up. Do you have a relationship with the boys at the Fire Pit Collective? Tell us how that all came about.
Sure. So at the end of 2021, I played in the Monday qualifier for the Barracuda Championship. And my friend Ryan French, who's better known as Monday Q Info on Twitter, was caddying for me. We just had this incredible day and had a playoff that went viral when my competitor in the playoff missed a just over 1 foot putt to give me a 2-putt from 12 feet to get a PGA Tour start. And with Ryan being the maestro of Mondays on the bag, it became a very big story. And so we had some success at the tournament. You know, I didn't really contend at the end of the tournament, but I was in the mix, and I had a fairly notable finish. And then I went to Q school, and I was a full member of the Korn Ferry tour at the time, but I didn't retain my status. And my wife and I had our first child. My son, it was really hard that year to be away from my son, and I was really thinking about what my next steps were. And Ryan suggested during that time of contemplation after Q school ended that there may be some possibility to turn, our week at the Barracuda into something bigger. And so that led into a variety of discussions, and it eventually sparked the idea for the show, The Grind. What the idea turned into is following a whole bunch of players like me. There's, I think, 8 to 10 players in season 1 as it is scheduled now. So players, who have interesting, unique stories. And my first 2 episodes kick off the series, and they've dropped 2 out of the last 3 weeks. Last week was a player named Paige Crawford. This coming week is a player named Joe Hooks. So it just gives you some very unique insight into the struggles and maybe perhaps some of the sacrifices and challenges that players who don't have status or have minimal status face as we try to make the really steep ascent to the big tour and achieve our dream.
Yeah, it was really compelling to watch as a golfer and, wannabe pro, if you will. I've played a lot of amateur golf, and, we all dream of being in the big stage. And what was it like having all the cameras around and waking up to, did you have time to yourself before they walked into your room, or give us some background on what was happening behind the scenes?
Right. I wish I had been able to experience. I did once. We did have a full production crew with, lighting tech and audio people, and it was just a full scale operation. But most of the time we were on the road, it was pretty nimble.
Yeah.
And we just had one camera person with us.
Okay.
And I guess we were in studio a few times. That became a bigger production, but that's a little bit different than being on the road and kind of shooting in a run and gun style.
Mm-hmm.
So when the production came to the house, it was just one, we don't have a big place here. So it was just one camera person. And I thought it was a lot of fun. My wife, she's very self-effacing. She would much prefer to talk or be interested in somebody else rather than have the focus on her. So she feels a lot less comfortable with it.
Mm-hmm.
There's definitely an adjustment period where, at first maybe you kind of feel like you need to say the right thing. And then eventually that fades away and you just become maybe more authentic, which is great. I was a little more apprehensive about kind of letting my son Miles be revealed to the world in a very close way. And
yeah,
I think that was kind of my only hesitation with it, but he loved it. He had more fun than probably we did because there was somebody else to give him some attention. And there's just one scene in the second episode, actually, very early on, when my wife and I are driving to the park, and MGM had just offered a deal, and we were trying to make sense of it. And he's in the back, and he's just staring at the camera and the camera person. And he's like, it's kind of not, he's 1 year old. And he's like, it's nice to have a friend back here, his face is just curious and joyous, and it's beautiful. So it was a lot of fun overall.
I think it's going to be great when he's going to look back at that and see himself. And when you guys see yourselves at that point in your lives, that junction of actually doing the production, you're going to really appreciate it. It's better than any family album for sure, or any kind of video slides. But let's look at Pebble Beach. You mentioned Pebble Beach briefly, and I was amazed. Well, maybe I shouldn't be amazed, but you played really well under the circumstances. Those first 3 days under that kind of pressure, playing at Pebble Beach was incredible. In a world where we have Netflix and the new Full Swing series coming out, all this content creation, hopefully this show gets to be seen, because it is slightly niche-y. It's the golf world, but it gives you kind of the inside look at what the grind is all about. So tell us about your experience of going to Pebble Beach for the first time, getting that courtesy car, getting sponsorship deals as you're traveling to the golf course.
Yeah, that was cool.
So maybe you could elaborate a little bit on that.
Sure. So I think if you follow Ryan French's content, particularly like in the last week of Waste Management, there were 3 great stories, 2 especially really standout stories from Monday qualifiers. And when you get through a Monday qualifier, all of a sudden you're in a field, that's when the real fun starts, but also that's when the expenses start, because all of a sudden last minute during the week of a tournament, and this week it was Super Bowl week and Waste Management week in Phoenix, and hotels were incredibly expensive. I mean, every night here, the Super 8 was $250 a night. If you could even get one. So like
that's crazy.
It's a little atypical. I mean, it's obviously there's more demand here with the Super Bowl than there would be in a typical PGA Tour week. But, a lot of the markets are like slightly smaller, and the PGA Tour events are pretty big as well. So you're still dealing with like maybe higher demand in a tour location. So now all of a sudden you have to find places to stay. And most tour events, you do get a rental car, not all of them, but some. So that's one, thing you don't have to do, but you still have to drop that rental car off and figure out how to pick that up. There's a lot of logistics to figure out. And another thing too is, okay, how now am I going to pay for this expense? A lot of players, a lot of players don't have a whole lot of backing. And so they're now faced with the possibility of, okay, I'm going to have another $1,500, $2,000 in expenses for the week. Can I somehow capitalize on this opportunity? But you have such a small window of time to do it. Now you have to get patches on your shirt and your hat or new clothes altogether for that to be worthwhile to a sponsor. So you only have basically Tuesday, and in some cases, those playoffs finish Tuesday morning and Wednesday to get that done. That's a very, very short window of time to find sponsors, to get, all that stuff completed in time for tee off on Wednesday. And it takes a lot of energy out. So I had a little more prep going into Pebble Beach, because I found out, I think it was midweek, the week previous to the tournament of AT&T, that I'd gotten the sponsor invite to the event. But still, it felt, like a slightly prolonged version of what I just described. Mm-hmm. And so I had my friend, who is now the marketing director at the Society, which is a sports management company here in Phoenix, help with the MGM deal. He put that together. Then I had, I just had some outstanding Twitter supporters who stepped up. One was Golf Tech, and the other was Inked Stores. Inked Stores was actually prior to the AT&T. They wanted to be involved with the show at the outset when we had started talking about what the show would look like. And so, they stepped up as well. And they are also I'm plugging them a little bit here, but they're
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
they're a swag and merchandise and embroidery company, but especially the embroidery side's big for them. So that's already in their wheelhouse, and they did just this unbelievable banger of a job. And to get they're based in Massachusetts, and to get all that stuff out to me, and with that particular thing could have been an episode to itself, just navigating all those logistics. So yeah, I mean, I had some companies that really stepped up and helped, and then the Croft School, somebody who was starting some schools around New England stepped up and helped. He's just a great Twitter supporter as well. So I was really lucky. And the other thing about getting an opportunity like that is that you really do have to make the most of it, because if you don't have status, this could be your only chance for the year to really, bring home some income, some real income. So, I was really fortunate to be able to do that. And then it's tournament time, and we get to Monterey a couple of days early. We played Spyglass and then Monterey Peninsula Country Club 2 days prior to the events starting. So we get to Pebble Beach on Tuesday, and those three places are just
magical.
Ryan says it best. He just says, it is as close to a religious experience for a non-religious person as you can have.
Yeah.
It is just, it's like a simulation. It is just so beautiful and surreal and stunning. And the history and these venues are storied. And it's just so fun as well, right? And then to find out my pairing, Peter Jacobsen, in his last PGA Tour event, where he started, that's where he got his first PGA Tour start. So it was coming full circle.
Great.
He played with Arnold Palmer in his first PGA Tour event, and he was sharing stories on that very first day at Spyglass as we were walking down the 10th hole, which is our first hole of the day. What Palmer's wisdom was to him, he was just very reflective that whole time. Huey Lewis is normally his partner. And Huey had been hurt. Huey had shoulder surgery. So Huey was walking shoulder to shoulder with us inside the ropes. Awesome. He couldn't play. So Ben Rector, who was a Billboard topping musician, filled in and played. And he was a new dad as well. We're similar ages. He's really, really good at golf. We just had a lot in common. So he and I were fast friends. And then, my partner, which couldn't have been a more fortuitous pairing, but Steve Young, legendary quarterback. So I couldn't have had a better group, a better pairing, a better environment that was conducive for, fun and just great scoring.
Yeah, that's great. I can't help but have a Huey Lewis song in my head right now. It's the heart of rock and roll. There's so many great hits, right?
Oh, incredible.
Yeah, no, I definitely grew up with Huey, and this Peter Jacobsen. Like, I've always been a fan of his, and he's one of those funny characters in golf. So, like, what a magic pairing for you to come out and what could be taken as a high pressure event. There's a lot of your goal is to earn further status, earn money, and play as well as you can. And it could have been such a different pairing and been way tougher on you, but the universe aligned and gave you this fun experience. Like it probably contributed to you playing well for those first few days. So what would be the difference? What was your last day? What was that pairing? And maybe talk with the differences in the grouping.
Yeah, the difference is it's pretty stark. I played with Davis Riley and Lanto Griffin.
Yeah,
right.
And another AM who had made the cut, and I believe that he was Davis's partner.
Let's put this into perspective for our audience, for our viewers and watchers. Where were you at this point?
I was T19 going into the last day.
Okay.
I was 8 under for the tournament, T19. I want to say the lead was maybe 13 under.
Wow.
It was either 12 or 13. I mean, it wasn't like, it was kind of like, most in a 1% chance that you're going to play that unbelievable round and really get
but
in
it's
the mix,
in sight. It's there. It's like it's right in front of you.
Well, most certainly you're in the conversation, in the conversation that counts.
Yeah.
So going back to my earlier point of this is such an important week to capitalize and to make as much as you can out of it. And so then that really hits home on Sunday. All the pressure actually really sets in, and the stakes are pretty apparent and obvious, and you're trying to do everything you can to push those out. And so that's really the push and pull and the struggle of Sunday, is you're trying to make it feel like just golf and trying to recapture the liveliness and energy and excitement of those first 3 days, but really the fun of it and the somewhat of the freedom of it. I mean, it took me a few holes to really get into the groove, kind of in the same way. Like that pressure never really goes away, but it becomes easier to set aside. And so it becomes super pronounced that last round. And then Davis and Lanto, they're grinders, out there. They keep to themselves. They are just very introverted on the golf course and focused on what they're doing. They don't really want to have a stop, walk and chat.
Yeah.
Not their style.
It is the final round. You are at work, and some people deal with things differently. You could be playing with Lee Trevino, and you could listen to his life story in about 10 minutes. Or you could be playing with somebody who's just locked in and focused. It reminds me that we talked to a lot of players, especially a lot of Champions Tour and senior players. We've talked to John Cook, Richard Sokol, Tim Petrovic, Ian Leggett. One of the things that we do on the show is talk about fun and embarrassing golf stories. Now, when I say fun or embarrassing, when you think of tournaments, does anything come to mind? Something that's happened at a tournament or that's kind of funny?
Well, in this kind of the same story, nothing jumps out, but I have like two separate ones. And one is like that particular tournament, I've talked about this before, and it's actually in the show, but on the back of the 14th tee, this was right after Steve and Ben had just had a closest to the pin on the previous hole, and Ben had won. And Steve, let me back up. Let me take a step back. Start on 12. So this is our third hole of the day. I don't think I've actually talked about this one on a pod, but it's a 12 hole at Spyglass, is like a 185 yard par 3 downhill. It's probably plays one, it's probably actual 193 or 4 on the card, but like it plays 8 or 9 down. And so I hit, and then all the AMs in the group hit it in the water. And then we get up, and Steve and everyone has to drop on the forward tee. So Steve drops, and Steve has a lot of potential. He's got a lot of speed in his swing. He's obviously unbelievably athletic, but he was just kind of getting getting started and putting the pieces together. And he chunks a wedge. It's like 105, accelerates through, hits the ball in the middle of his through swing, and it goes over his left shoulder, like 60 yards over his left shoulder. He double hits it from 105 yards.
Right.
And everyone in our group just goes dead silent. We're like looking at each other, and then we start like nervously laughing.
Right.
So then the next hole, Ben's kind of needling him a little bit about it. And then so they have a closest to the pin. Ben wins. We get on the back of the 14th tee, and the people that live out there's like a little crowd, sun shining through the tall pines back there. And the people who live back there bring out 2 guitars, one for Peter, one for Ben. And they play this little bluesy riff. And then Ben moves over to Steve, and he starts playing this like beautiful walk down, picking tune. And then he freestyles a song about Steve losing the bet. And he's like, oh, I'll take all your money. I'll take any form of payment. I take Bitcoin. And it was great. And we walk off the tee, and Steve was like, he's got the voice of an angel.
That's cool.
Awesome.
I never thought Steve Young would be saying he's got the voice of an angel to me softly as we walked off the tee.
Right.
So yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah, there's that. I think another moment from the show actually that's pretty embarrassing is like, that's the thing, is when you sign up for something like this or agree to do it, that like if you go play really badly, it's going to be there laid bare for the world to see. And so in that first episode, I mean, I just wasn't practicing very much, but I had Korn Ferry status then, and I had to make the most of it, which gets you straight into the Monday qualifier, so you don't have to pre-qualify. And I had 3 left in the year, so I had to go play those and try to make something of them. But as you'll see in the episode, or you have seen, Miles was really sick. We just had a lot of turmoil at home, so I just wasn't prepared. And at the RSM Monday, I'm like 4 over through 7. I bogey 3 of my first 5 holes. There's nothing in my game that says I'm going to turn this around and have a chance. And it was just a real depressing March for the rest of the round. But like the world's going to see that, and they're going to, as they do, as social media does, they're going to judge and be like, who does this guy, just your mind, your mind can kind of take off, and you can start to consider what the outside world will think of you and your game and your pursuit. So I think that kind of, in a like very serious way, was embarrassing at the time.
Well, definitely, there's some the social media warriors are out there and looking to shit all over someone's parade, when really it's like what you're going through. And for one, I'm assuming Miles is okay now.
He is.
Okay, good.
He's okay, Michael. Thank you.
That's like, I was thinking, because I've played a lot of amateur tournaments, and the outside work things, whatever it might be, you take a fire call from a client and you're about to tee off in a tournament, it distracts you. So, and here you are trying to capitalize on your last few events, and there's a big outcome if you do capitalize. Your status for next year, money in the bank, and it's just a snowball effect. So accolades to you for grinding through. But what do you do to like settle yourself down, just to try to give your chance to, give yourself that chance to perform?
You mean just how do I prepare for one of those?
The worries at home, especially with a child, I could just only imagine. But you've got to play, you've got to do it. So do you have a method of just getting yourself, in the game mode?
So look, everyone's always whether you play golf or, you're an accountant or whatever, like you're always compartmentalizing different areas of your life out of necessity. So, as a professional golfer, I think you learn that, and there are times when it's just not possible. But for me, I meditate, and that's how I start off every day of tournament week. I get out of bed and I, sit there and just try to quiet my mind and really just get a nice flow and positive thoughts and positive feelings. And so that, that's kind of how I try to tune a lot of that out. Or I tried to, at least. That sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But I think no matter what, was like, there was just no probable way that I was going to play well given those circumstances. To just show up having not practiced anyways is unlikely that you're going to go shoot 64 in competition, but then to do it with all the stuff at home makes it a lot less likely.
Hey, Mark, we had Brian Cooper on when he made the cut and finished in the top 5 on the Champions Tour Q School. And these stories need to be told. Like, he was grinding for over 25 years to be able to play on the bigger stage, right? Playing the mini tours on and off for so long, finally gets to play. Tell us, it takes a lot of tenacity. What kind of encouragement or what kind of advice would you give to, an up and coming golfer or somebody who's been doing it for a long time, not to give up?
You hear so often about players having teams, and every big player credits their team now in some way. It's much harder to build a team or to maintain a team when you've been playing for a few years. You may be a promising player early on coming out of college, and you take on an agent and you get some financial support and you get a coach, and those people come around you and rally around you. But that, I think that some of that can be kind of short-lived and temporary. And so there's like an initial kind of boost of support, and then the longer the results don't go your way, people kind of fall off.
Right.
And And to a lot of people's credit, my very best friends, especially my college teammates, and I certainly don't talk about them enough, but like there have been times when I've had some incredible support, and there have been a lot of times when I've had absolutely nobody around besides, my mom and a couple of my college teammates to kind of lean on. And when people ask me, I just, you can get in a dark place when you start feeling like your scores are directly connected to your well-being, to
Right.
your outlook of life, to your self-worth.
Mm.
And in those moments, I think it helps to have somebody to put things in perspective for you. So I always try to tell people, like, I wish I could go back and talk to myself about finding more mentors, and just trying to keep people around, trying to stay more connected to people. Another pitfall of professional golf is you become very insular, just like very insulated. And I think the more competition you play, the more you're out there practicing for 7 or 8 hours a day and, playing and whatever, you can start to feel pretty lonely. And you can start to, especially if you're not playing well, you can start to feel like you're bothering people if you're asking for help. And
Right.
I was terrible for a long time. I mean, spent my early 30s, end of my 20s, early 30s. I just felt like an island, and I didn't want to bother people. And so I would just encourage people as much as possible, after their first few years where they feel like they've got support, if they start to find themselves on that trajectory, to go find people, that don't just look at the golf side of it, that, they can really look to, who are maybe a little bit older, who have been through it. They're like people like myself, especially grinders, I think really want to share their experience. And I think we're going through a time now where it's more acceptable. It's, it's better to share. And I think if you just put in a little work, you can find people like that. And I would encourage younger players, who really from the get-go to seek out more mentors.
Yeah, that's good
Really well
advice.
said.
Yeah, no, I love it. Even on amateurs, right? It's golf. It's an awesome game, but as soon as you're competing at golf, it just gets incrementally harder at whatever stage that's on. And I think anyone who plays to compete can relate to that. So some solid advice.
Mike, it's funny that you say that, because someone like John Rahm, I think on his putter, says something like "putt like a kid," or "remember how
That's
it
right.
was when you were a kid." You're just out there having fun, using that freedom and creativity, but still have, obviously, you need the confidence. You got to rely on that skill and all that hard work you put in, and focus on that visualization. My best rounds I ever played was seeing every shot and just actually talking it out with a friend of mine or somebody I was playing with in a tournament. I would say, you call the shot, just be that confident, but be creative. Looking at what you said, Mark, I think that's really amazing advice, is to be able to lean on other people. And people come into their own at different times in their lives. You're looking at Nick Taylor, who had a great weekend. Everybody kind of disregarded the Canadians playing well, Adam Hadwin, Nick Taylor, and he did win, ironically, at Pebble Beach and at the Farmers. He's got 2 wins, but he's in his 30s. You look at someone like Vijay Singh, who really didn't come into his own until his 40s, and then just went on a tear in the Tiger era, right?
Yeah.
So really, it depends on a lot of things. That being said, what's your season looking like this year? What do you have planned? Where can we see you?
So it's tough when you don't have any status. You're really looking towards Q School at the end of the year. It's like right now, and on the PGA Tour, everyone's starting to look to Augusta, right? Like all those top players, they're building their schedules now around Augusta. That's what matters the most. And so when you don't have status, it's like you're building up towards Q School, especially now that Q School will have 5 spots directly to the PGA Tour. So that's my number one most important focus, is how can I be peaking for that? But that's so long from now. It's up until that point, it'll be trying to play as many longer tournaments as possible. So right now, in these next few weeks, I feel like my game is probably going to pop in about 3 to 4, probably somewhere between 2 and 4 weeks based on what I'm seeing in my practice right now. So I'll try to go hit some qualifiers pretty hard, but it's probably going to be mostly like, Korn Ferry and PGA Tour Mondays and things like that.
Yeah.
And then the closer I get to Q school time, the more I'll try to ramp up into 3-4 day events, many 4-day events that I can possibly get. And there's not that many in mini tours that you can play. So that, that's kind of it. I mean, and trying to remain positive and try to put, the bigger picture into play as much as possible, because when you don't have anything like on the forefront, it can be easy to get really, very lazy.
Yeah.
Just go put in a couple hours here, go play some fun rounds for 9 holes with my family. And that's all great. And it needs to be a part of the routine, but also, there has to be some fire under my ass as well. So
yeah, you need some goals and,
right.
some scheduled dates. You have something to build towards. I always like using the analogy of what boxers do. They got 6 weeks prep before a certain event. They peak for that event. And we only see that maybe 4 to 7 times a year. You got the majors, obviously the tour championships, where the guys actually go out and prepare a lot more than every other tournament. Like you get there early, you get to see the course, you take down as many notes as possible, right? And you're I hate the word grinding right now because it's also the name of the show.
How many times can we say grind?
No pun intended, but you're grinding away for a specific tournament because it means that much more. And I think if that approach was taken a little bit more for the average, journeyman professional preparing for an event, I think possibly, those 1 or 2 strokes per round, how much they mean, right? Those few strokes.
Yes,
and,
for sure.
Mike, you brought up the fact that we talked before the cast about the importance of practice and preparation. What goes into practice and preparation for you, Mark?
For me these days, I'll try to go really intensive on like the technical side of my swing early in the season, things that I want to make adjustments to and change. And when my body's feeling really healthy and when I don't have like a lot of competition or anything on the horizon. And, it's not kind of what it used to be, but I have such a much better sense of my tendencies and my patterns that it doesn't need to be. And then I just want to play. I just want to play as many holes as I can. And the more that I can put on the line, the higher the stakes. And that's, if that can be money, great. But, there's only so much, so many games you can get in. And so, as long as I'm playing for something and I feel like at least there's some pride on the line, I want to be playing as much golf as I can.
Yeah.
And certainly that's true leading into more events.
What about on the physical fitness side? Are you working with any TPI coaches or Rotex Motion? Or is there anything specific you're doing there to get your body ready for this?
No. So, I mean, I've long had a fitness routine, and my sister is a certified yoga instructor. And so I've long done yoga, and, I'm constantly stretching. I feel like I'm pretty much in this exact same shape I am right now as I was coming out of college.
Amazing.
Yeah. And so I've been really lucky. My injuries have been so minor.
That's great.
Just like little tweaks here and there where it just forces me to take a week at a time off, and then I'm back to back to where I should be.
People should take yoga and move it to the forefront, because I've had times through my life where I've gotten into it, and especially the hot yoga. Geez, after, it's like stretching in hell while you're doing it, but right afterwards, like it just feels so euphoric and loose and limber after doing it for a few weeks, consecutively. It feels unbelievable. So,
Mike, I told you my first experience at hot yoga. I never wanted to do it again. I went into an intense hot yoga class for over 60 minutes, and I was in pain the next day. I was, it was intense. It was hot, and but maybe I shouldn't have gone to an advanced class.
It's the trouble. You get in there, you get warm, and you think you're 15 years younger, so you can overdo it in a hot yoga class. But if just baby steps, everything. Don't try to hit the end goal in the first class. Just being in there, stretching a little bit, and lying on the floor. You're still getting some benefits from it. But yoga is key. I keep trying to kick myself in the ass to get back at it, but one of these days I will.
Mark, your sponsors, like, we want you to mention the people that have helped you in this journey. And so maybe you could tell us off the top of your head, whatever you could remember, those who helped you get there as far as sponsors, and where can we see the grind?
So for the show, it's on YouTube. Just search for the Fire Pit Collective's YouTube page, subscribe to them, so you get a notification whenever they drop a new episode. So my episodes are episode 1 and 2. Again, episode 3 is Paige Crawford. She's she's a very compelling story, I think, as well. Obviously, women's golf gets less attention, and I think that's why this is an important story. Mm-hmm. She lives in a van, traveling around to cut costs, and it's definitely a different look. And as a golf fan, I'm very interested in how other people approach their own stories, their own pursuits. Joe Hooks is episode 4. He's an APGA player predominantly, also kind of a social media influencer and just a big personality. And I think his episodes will be very interesting and compelling. When you play pro golf for 16 years, there's like way too many people and you have to go so deep. But like something I often take for granted is, like, I mentioned, sponsors, and I mention teammates or my wife, but I hardly ever mention, and this is another thing too, is like, Michael Bamberger just wrote an article about me, and he was very interested in my dad and how my dad's life affected my golf career. And I don't get enough of a chance to thank my mom, and she is just this unbelievable steely woman, where she endured a lot. My dad is a wonderful man when he was sober, but had some real struggles with alcoholism. And my mom raised my sister and I, did everything she could to foster my dream and cultivate it, with very, very few resources, as an English teacher and picking up substitute teaching jobs here and there as she could, and getting me into the tournaments that mattered, making big, real sacrifices. So I love her. Thanks, Mom.
That's amazing.
She's the best.
That's great.
And then, my college teammates, they've been there no matter what happens. They give me, for better or worse, the truth. And then, like I said, I went through a period where I felt like I didn't have a lot of support, but there've been so many people from New Hampshire early on, especially, people who just pitched in where they could. Maybe they didn't have a whole lot, but they had a few $100 here and there to help me get to an event. And there was a gentleman named Dennis Crowley. There is a gentleman named Dennis Crowley who helped put a lot of those people together for me. And he's been, there have been, he was one of the mentors, has been Jeff Beattie, who was the headmaster at New Hampton School, a long mentor of mine, wrote a book that I studied at Notre Dame. Coincidentally, it was amazing to be in a sociology class and hear that I was going to be reading his book. Very cool. Called Sports Plus, about youth development in sports. Great book.
Right on.
But yeah, and then getting in touch with Ryan French, and he's single-handedly almost kind of saved my golf career, kept me playing, given me the encouragement along with my wife to keep me going. So just so many people to thank, so many more people than that, but those are the people that, like, in this moment really jump out, and I'm just very lucky.
That's really cool.
That support.
Well, and I noticed the compliments coming from Alan Shipnuck and Matt Janella and the Fire Pit crew, just talking about it was the audio of your impact position, and obviously you're flushing the ball beautifully. So what's it like hanging with them? Because obviously Bamberger's writing about you, and if you've gotten to know them a little bit, or can we maybe expect to see you contributing to them in the future, or is there anything going on there?
So I have written a little bit in the last year, and just to have them as resources is amazing. I mean, I never thought I'd have Michael Bamberger writing anything about me, you
It's
know, and so
amazing.
Yeah, that's
that
great.
is an accomplishment in itself. I mean, you know, I'm very humbled by it. But, you know, I saw Alan last weekend at the Golf Tech. The Golf Tech came out, and they brought a lot of their instructors out and had a big party. And I saw Alan. I introduced him to my wife for the first time, and I said, "Oh, honey, this is, you know, this is the guy who said all those nice things that I'll use on a resume someday."
Yeah, awesome.
But yeah, I certainly have. I've been very fortunate that they've kind of allowed me to enter that arena, and you know, try out some different interests.
Yeah. Oh, very cool.
Well, I'll tell you, Mark, we're thrilled to see your progress. We're excited to follow your journey. Golf is a very lonely sport, right? And we know it because, you know, we've been involved in golf for many years. So you're not alone. We're cheering for you. Well, hopefully you're going to make some cuts and you're going to be able to get an opportunity to play on the big stage. And for Michael Bleakley, Mark Baldwin. Oh my gosh, I called you Mike. I'm Raphael Calamat. Thanks to ECS Agency, of course. Next week, we've got Len Matisse, who's a PGA Tour player and plays on the Champions Tour. So we're looking forward to that. And Hope Barnett from the LPGA, content creator. So we're happy to have her on as well. Until next week, take care, guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Guys, thanks for having me.